So your name today is Oswald? Good morning.
Good morning.
It's good to be with you today. If you took note as we read the psalm and shared it antiphonally together, and as we listened to the presentation of the gospel this morning, what we heard were words of hope and the fulfillment of the promise of God's grace to be light and truth and love in the lives of all people who believe and receive Him. I can think of many circumstances in life where that would probably be the only option, the only thing that's going to pull us through, help us get strength, find courage, help us find peace and comfort when everything else seems to not be very peaceful or comfortable. The church today is a place that seems to be on the wane. Not just this church, but every church. It doesn't matter whether you're Southern Baptist or Presbyterian or Assemblies of God or Lutheran or Roman Catholic. There seems to be a decline in the willingness of people to trust the light and truth of God in Jesus Christ. I'm not sure why that is. Have we come to hope so much in what the world can give us that we have not realized that the world always falls short? Doesn't matter who we place our trust in, it always comes up on the short end. It doesn't matter who you may have supported to be president or what political party to which you belong. No matter what it is, you're bound to find some disappointment and perhaps even some darkness in what's going on with our nation and other nations of the world. I see in Afghanistan, as of yesterday, that the treaty or the peace, temporary peace with the Taliban has been stopped. So that war is going to erupt again in Afghanistan. We understand that things in this world are not what God would like them to be. And the only place where we come to hear a message of hope, the only place where we come to find certainty, is to the church and in our lives with Jesus Christ. It is in the faith of others around us who we may or may not see eye to eye with, but who trust in the grace of God in Jesus Christ, where we find peace and comfort and compassion and a willingness to draw closely together in spite of what may be in the world great differences. A willingness to care for one another, not taking into account where we might be socially, economically, in our age. Not wanting to separate one another by any of those characteristics, but instead finding in the grace of God and the truth and love and light of Jesus Christ a place to live in commonality with hope. It's what the psalmist tells us in Psalm 30. It's exactly where the psalm. Now, there are other psalms that aren't so hopeful. There are psalms of lament. And by the way, lament is always appropriate in the church. Lament when we don't think God is present enough with us. Lament when the world seems to be infringing on who we are. Yes, that too. All kinds of lament. Lament when the bills pile up too high and there aren't enough resources to handle them. Ask any family with kids today what it costs to try and make ends meet. When Melody and I were first married, without children, our grocery bill was $10 a week for the two of us. Remember those days? Loaf of bread was 25 cents. 10. 5 pounds of burger for $1. Oh, we're not, well, but we did have 17 cent a gallon gas. I defy you to find 17 cent a gallon gas today. Now when you go to fill up your tank on your vehicle, at least in my van, it's $50 to $60. And that, if I'm really fortunate, gets me through 4 or 5 days. Imagine, when I was in college, I would fill up my big Ford Custom 500 with 25 gallons of gas for $5. The world has changed. And it hasn't all been for the good, though some of it certainly has been. We are far more cognizant of what goes on all over the world today. We aren't shut out of information. Maybe you think the information age and the technology age is a curse. You know, if you grew up watching Red Skelton and Uncle Milty on TV in the night, and then the screen did what? Went off. 10 o'clock, whether you wanted it or not, there was no television. And very little kids programming, which I think was a blessing. We have way too much kids programming today. Now the world just throws things at us constantly, infringes on our relationship with God and Jesus Christ, tempts us to pull away, which is what's happening in the church today. The church doesn't seem to be a place where hope comes to people anymore. I'm not certain why that's the case, because the message of the gospel has not changed. The approach of churches to presenting the light and truth and love of God in Jesus Christ is the very same message that I heard growing up in the church. Very same message. And the pews were full of hundreds of people when I was a child. And today, even in 37 years of ministry, when I went back to my parish for the parish back in Ann Arbor for 125th anniversary celebration, they had trouble filling the church for that celebration. When I was a pastor there were 1,300 members, and we worshiped 425 to 450 a Sunday. We filled the church almost every week. Today, the sanctuary has been remodeled and seats about 250 to 300, and they cannot fill it. And it's not for a desire for people to give more money, because nobody had to pay for the remodel of their church. Widows in the congregation, who nobody had any idea had money, gave the church close to $4 million for property, for remodeling, for replacing the organ and moving things. But all of that resource caused that church to come apart at the seams. Because if you don't like the color of the carpet today, or you don't like the color chosen to paint the walls, what do? You leave. That's the world infringing on this. We aren't here to see the color of the carpet. We aren't here to worry about the color of the walls. We're here to worry about the stations of the cross and their place in our life. We are here to worry about whether or not the gospel is truly the shaping factor. We are here to worry about whether or not I can find hope in Jesus Christ and find my life pulled together, not because of what I can do or what anybody else can do, but because of what God has already done by sacrificing his Son for the forgiveness of my sin. Oh yes, and yours. Because without that, there would be no hope. Without that, we would know at the end of this life, we would be separated from God. And we know we are not going to be in that place. The light and truth and love of Christ in God are ours for all time. forever. Lo, I am with you until the end of the age. Those are some of Christ's last words to his disciples. My light and my truth and my love are going to reside in, with, and around you by the power of my Spirit all of your life. And when that time comes that that life ends, my promise doesn't stop. I am with you forever in eternity because you have the gift of salvation, because I have been raised from the dead, resurrected from the dead, and ascended into heaven. I wonder how many times this next week we'll see things that feel like hopelessness to us in the world. And will we sigh and turn away and find ourselves in a sense of grief and perhaps even loss? Or will we turn to the one who can do it all? The one who can hear our prayers? The one whose light has never gone out, whose light has never been overcome by the darkness? The one whose truth is the only real truth? Or will we be like Pilate or the Roman prefect of the area of Christ who says, well, what is truth? We know what truth is. It is God's love for his creation and his children. His sublime, eternal, and holy love for all of his children. His promise that he will always be with us, in us, and around us every single day. You notice none of that promise includes always being the winner, always having things the way I want them. Doesn't include any of those things. What it includes is, in the face of the choices of the world, God's promise is that God will always be with us. Will never leave us in the face of disease, in the face of destruction, in the face of grief, in the face of discord. God will always be with us. That's God's promise. And no matter what other thing happens in life, God is not stopping. In the name of Jesus Christ, amen.